This episode is brought to you by Windrose Recovery, a family of premier addiction treatment programs in southeastern Wisconsin. Privately owned, Windrose Recovery offers a full continuum of personalized care for those struggling with addiction, including the Manor for residential treatment, Midwest Detox for inpatient detoxification, and Windrose Counseling for outpatient treatment. With highly personalized treatment focused on trauma, Dr. Chantel Thomas and her expert team offer an authentic experience, creating the kind of deep emotional change that's crucial for long-term recovery. If you or someone you love is struggling with addiction, call Windrose Recovery at 414-409-5300. You can learn more about Windrose Recovery by clicking the link in the show notes or by visiting windroserecovery.com. Thank you for listening to The Path to Authenticity. My name's Tom Gentry. I think of the show as the opposite of small talk. You'll hear real conversations with real people who know who they are. We talk about what makes them who they are, how they became who they are, and how we might become truer expressions of who we are.
Live on the road.
I am Lee McCormick, and this is The Path to Authenticity.
Nowhere to run, nothing to hide from the government's prying eye. Take yourself a summer holiday.
The Path to Authenticity proudly supports the I Speak Media Foundation, advancing media literacy education through an evolving series of outreach programs within the communities that need it most. For more information, visit ispeakmedia.org. If this is your first time here, thanks for checking it out. If not, thanks for coming back. I'm Tom Gentry, and this is The Path to Authenticity. Episode 133 for July 20th, 2021. This episode features a conversation with a colleague named Lee McCormick. And this is one of those where as soon as I finished this conversation, I was kicking myself for not having had it sooner. Just really enjoyed it. Someone who I admire, look up to, and feel like this one you guys will really enjoy. So, hope you do. Here you go. Lee McCormick.
To hide from the government's prying eye. Take yourself a summer holiday.
Oh, it's fun, man. It's fun to have conversations about this life we live.
Absolutely it is. So you're a Nashville guy, and being someone who, I've worked in the addiction treatment industry at this point for close to 25 years, I guess, and I've just heard your name so many times over the years, and it's always spoken with reverence and respect. And I know must have shaken hands a few times over the years, but I've gotten to know guys who worked for you who I really love and respect. And we've met, but I never really got a chance to get to know you or anything. And I am definitely familiar with the work you've done and just excited to do this. So why don't you tell the listener who you are, what you do? I mean, that's a big question. I know you could go in a lot of directions. And you and I have had some pretty great conversations, and I know we can get pretty philosophical. So I really want to learn about you. So where are you from?
Well, I was born in Jacksonville, Florida. A long, long time ago in a land far away. No, I was born in Jacksonville. I grew up at the beach. Um, my family had a ranch in southern Wyoming, so I spent all my summers on a big ranch in southern Wyoming as a kid until I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
And man, you know, my whole life I've kind of been a loner, I guess. I've like always had friends and all that, but I always saw the world different. Um, and I've always been a guy that just couldn't do it the way everybody else does it.
Mm-hmm.
I've always had different inspirations or different motivations, different feelings. For whatever reason, I was born kind of honoring the way I felt about things, um, more than I could honor or more than I could follow the official story of how we are supposed to live life, which, was when I used it against myself, it was a nightmare, when I was at war with the world. And then once I realized I could, I didn't have to be at war with the world, and I found the recovery path. Although it, not being a rule follower is not popular in the recovery path, but that's what allowed me to turn my recovery journey into recovering my authenticity, recovering a relationship with who I really am. And, so I moved to Nashville, um, moved to Nashville in 1979 with a band. I was like 20 years old, 19, 20 years old, and spent some years on the road playing music, and kept going back to cowboying, and got married, took my first hostage wife, and we stayed married for 12 years. That was one of those typical stories where the behaviors I developed living on the road, getting high and partying all the time and throwing furniture out of hotel rooms and all that kind of insanity. I stopped throwing furniture out of hotel rooms, but it didn't stop getting high. Um, so you fast forward like 12 years, and I burned that marriage down. But we had two beautiful little girls and got divorced in my mid 30s. Um, and then a couple years later, ended up going to a therapist, which was a bizarrely foreign idea. I hadn't, this was like um, early 90s, 90, 91, 92. And there were no recovery movies. Recovery was not discussed in our culture at that time. I mean, unless you were in recovery and in the program or something, but it wasn't like it is today. Um, and ended up going to a therapist. I was living on a ranch in South Florida, and she was very cool. She was one of those magic moments where I picked somebody out of the phone book, and she was like the angel I needed. And she told me if I would go to treatment, it would change my life, and I'd probably enjoy it. And it did. And it did. Um, and I came home to my ranch here, 50 miles west of Nashville, and had this inspired kind of God moment, and had the idea that I could start a healing program, recovery program on the ranch that would include a broader scope of experiences than what traditional treatment was. And so I didn't know that I should not be able to get that done. So I got it done.
Yeah.
Um, people are like, dude, you're only 2 years in recovery. You can't start a treatment center. And I was like, okay, thank you for sharing. Next. And that's how the ranch started.
Now, did you tell me you went to Sierra Tucson?
Yeah, I did. I was very fortunate. Sierra Tucson was really cool.
Now, so was that the late 70s, early 80s?
No, it was 90. It was 96.
What's your sobriety date, Lee?
I don't do it that way anymore. When I went to treatment, my thing was doing blow. I was a coke guy. That was the one monkey that I could not get off my back. So when I got out of treatment, I came back to Nashville, and I don't know, over the next 6 or 8 months, I went out 2 or 3 times and stayed out all night again. And then it was like one day, it was just like, okay, this actually really does suck, and I'm not doing this shit anymore. And that was the end of it. But I've never counted days. I did for maybe the first year, but my attention shifted pretty early on. That recovery so inspired me that it was about the life I'm living. It was not about the wreckage of the past and all of that. That needed to be addressed. The suggestions like make the amends and clean up your stuff and take 100% responsibility for yourself. But for me, it was so much more inspiring than living my present as a constant reference to my past. That wasn't interesting to me. I wanted to create a new life. I wanted to create a new relationship. I'm a very forward moving guy. And that's, I don't know, about 4 years in recovery, I read the 4 agreements and was inspired and ended up going on a journey to Mexico with Miguel Ruiz's crew. And that just blew my heart open.
Mm-hmm.
And my life took on a whole other thing. I mean, I met a Native American guy and got invited to Sweat Lodge ceremony in Arizona for the first time, and Native American church ceremonies. And, it was all freaking exciting. And yes, there's that heartbreak that haunts you, but those memories that circle around and around. And there are that old energy of those old emotions and those old feelings that comes up over time. But I literally was living a life that allowed me to step into that stuff and address it just as a part of my day-to-day life. I've never lived a siloed life. I just lived one life. People say, what do you do for a living? And it's like, dude, I just do what I do.
I'm a professional Lee McCormick.
Well, yeah, I mean, I make shit up.
Yeah, well, I have a guy who was a sponsor of mine for a while who's just like one of the coolest people I ever met in my life. I heard him share in a meeting one time, like, he just said, I get to be me for a living. Like, what's better than that? For me, that's kind of, I don't know, I'm close, and maybe I am there. Sometimes I feel that way, like, man, I can't believe I get paid to do this stuff. And really just love people is what it is. Just loving on people.
Fortunately, I connected up with Miguel Ruiz, right? And for, a long time ago. And the way Miguel would speak to life, it sounded really simple and kind of trite. Like he used to say, you can be happy or you can be stupid. And most people choose to be stupid. So they hang on to their suffering and they identify by their suffering and they label themselves by their suffering and they wear their suffering because it's familiar and too much fear to let it go, too much fear to turn around and look the other way. And, and I realized for all the curses in my life that the truth is there were far more blessings because I was still here and I was still getting up in the morning and I was still showing up and I was still, I wasn't quitting. I'm not a quitter. And again, that's like one of those blessing curses. When it was back to the wild old days, not being a quitter was not, it get kind of weird. but, but life was to be lived. And there was just something about reading the 4 agreements all those years ago that so inspired me. I was like, oh my God, life is really to be lived, not judged, not measured, not counted. It's like, it's really sincerely just to live and be grateful for the sunrise and be grateful for the breeze. I don't know, man. That hooked me.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you mentioned the ranch, and that was the time when that opened. I mean, the industry has changed so much since around that time when I started, where, you know, there used to be all these extended care programs.
Yeah.
Somebody would go to treatment for 30 days and then they'd be referred to a place for another 90 or maybe even 6 months. And for about 5 years, I ran a transitional living facility, and there was like this stream of guys that we got who came from the ranch. So I got to work with guys who went through that program and got to get to know some of the guys who worked for you there. So then that you removed yourself from that situation at one point, and then when did Integrative Life Center come in?
Well, I sold the ranch in 2010, and I had started ILC in 2009, like late 2009, early 2010. I started Integrative Life Center to be the continuing care program for the ranch, because the ranch was more open-ended and creative in its approach to recovery, you know, and I wanted a program that was congruent to work with people, something that was more expansive and creative than what was offered in Nashville at the time. You know, so that's how Holly and I started it.
And, you know, it's such a cool location where, I mean, was there anything in that part of Nashville, Music Row, like before that, treatment wise, or no?
No, no. And you know what, like moving here, that's kind of funny. Moving here in 79 when I did, Music Row was Music Row back then. I mean, there were people walking the streets with guitars and cassette tapes, and the music industry wasn't really an industry.
Right.
In 79, Nashville didn't feel like a music industry. It felt like this giant creative music community that happened to have record companies involved in it. Kind of like the treatment business
Right.
wasn't the treatment industry
Right.
to me in the 90s. You know, when it became an industry, it really shot itself in the foot, in my opinion. But yeah, man, being on Music Row was, again, recovery to me is an inspired journey. You know, the opportunity is to connect with people on a heart and soul level, help them realize that light that they were born with is still in there, and that their spirit has never been broken by this world. You know, our spirit's not of this world, and our spirit cannot be taken out by this world, but we can damn sure lose ourselves to this world, and this world can eat us alive. But the truth of our spirit, it's greater than this world. And I've always seen this creative thread that a human life it's like a living art installation. And so what's the quality of the life that you've chosen, that you've created? And most of us, I have this conversation with people in our treatment programs. You know, we're not taught anything about being human growing up. We're taught how to be good Christians or Catholics or Jews or Hindus or Muslims. We're taught how to fit into our hood or our family. We're all born into unique situations. We're each a unique individual, but we're really taught that compliance is the most important rule in life, to be compliant with what's right. And then all the judgment that's woven into the operating system that we're taught to download into ourselves. And so our life, just right from the get-go, there's this inherent conflict. We are not taught about the nuance of emotion. That you're going to have these emotional responses that we call feelings, and they occur as you experience life. They're an automatic aspect of what happens as you have experiences in life. Emotions are triggered, and emotions are just energy, and they're going to move through you, and they're going to trigger you, and you're going to want to respond or react. And some feel great, some feel awful, and some can haunt you. But as a human being, it's important that you learn to live a responsible relationship with having this amazing emotional aspect to yourself as a human. We're not taught that. You know, I said to some guys in a group the other day, if you're going to learn to fly an F-16 or a 757, you go through hours and hours and hours and years of
Right.
training. before you can fly a supersonic fighter jet. Well, we human beings are far more sophisticated than that airplane is, and we don't go into any training about being human. We're just like downloaded with this culturally compliant operating system and just sent out there to go do it, and it's unfortunate.
Well, and I'm at this place in my life where I've been challenging all those things, and that's part of why I'm doing this podcast, and I've just recognized the extent to which I have been at war with myself.
Right.
Fighting myself rather than fighting for myself. And, those societal conventions, one of them, and I've talked about this a number of times on the podcast before, but just for the longest time, until like a year or two ago, I'd sleep a little late on a Saturday or Sunday morning, which to me might be 9 or 10 o'clock. But, I grew up in this home where it was get your ass out of the bed. You're not going to sleep the day away, whether it was summer or Sunday or whatever. And I had that in my head. And, and as a full grown man, feel bad about sleeping a little late. And it just hit me, I don't have to do that. I can let go of that. I can make my own rules and decide how I want to live my life and what really works for me. And then I started to get curious about, what if I was never taught any of that stuff? When would be the optimal time for me to be awake and to work? And I don't know, because that's not how I was raised. And, still in this country, the educational system, everything is still very much structured to groom people to work from 9 to 5 on an assembly line to enrich someone else. That's like what it's all about.
Absolutely. Well, and it's interesting, though, that COVID just blew a lot of that up.
Yeah. And that has been interesting because, I will say, I feel fortunate that I'm someone who could work from home. I worked from home most of the time before that anyway. And I realize some people haven't had the luxury to be able to, some people have to go to work, whether they're afraid of getting exposed or not, to make a living. But I feel like, most of our mainstream culture, there were the people who realized what a gift it was to be able to stop. And then there are the people who fought it and, God damn it, I want the barbershop to be open again because I get a haircut every 6 weeks.
In a sense, COVID broke the spell that we were all living under. The spell of our culture, the spell of our devotion to our familiar. We humans find security in the familiar, even if the familiar is hell. You see it every day working with people in treatment, that people come into treatment and, their life is awful. And then when you start questioning them, the first thing we do is defend the life we have,
Right.
The life we've been living, even though it's awful. It's the only life I got, man. And who are you to be poking at?
Right.
Like we want something familiar so we can feel safe, even if it's hell.
Yeah.
And that's an innate part of what happens to us living from our mind all the time. Our culture, the modern man culture, it's really the European, I think it has European roots. But we are such a mind dominated species of beings now, rather than living from our heart, rather than living from our intuition, from our inspiration, from our spirit. We're taught you better figure out what you're going to be and figure out who you are and figure out what you want to do and figure out how to get there and figure out how to make it work and figure out how to be sober and figure out how, like, it's like we just wear our little mind out, demanding that it take responsibility for us, and we are not our mind.
Yeah.
I am the consciousness that is aware of the thoughts that I have. I am the consciousness that hears the voices in my head. You know, I'm not the thoughts that I have. I'm the one that's listening.
Mm.
And once I was taught this 20 years ago, once I realized, oh my God, that's true. It's like, you don't know what the next thought that's going to enter your mind is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell me what the next thought that's coming is going to be. And so a lot of them are tied to essentially the hard drive of information and memory that we carry around. Our mind operates. It is the source of where a computer came from. You know, a computer is a physical manifestation of the way the human mind operates. But I'm not the hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the energy that allows the entire operating system to function. And I'm aware of everything that's going on should I develop the practice and ability to live in awareness of my mind as opposed to live as though my mind's a tyrant and I live in reaction to it all the time. My mind's not the boss of me. I think that's the way you can say it. I live from my heart to a fault. I mean, to a fault.
Why to a fault?
Well, because my life would be a little more cushion in this world if I wasn't so, if I little bit more balance and would do a few more things for money instead of telling everything I think that's not correct to fuck off. Like, I mean, you've heard that about me, man. That's my reputation in the treatment business. Like, I'm this crazy man that if heads and beds is more important than the quality of care, I'll take my toys and go home. Treatment work, healing work, recovery work is sacred.
Yeah.
It is sacred. And money can be made off of it. But dude, when revenue generation takes precedent over the heart and soul of the opportunity that we have to be of service to each other and this healing journey, you've lost the thread.
Yeah.
And there is nothing wrong with making money. And we would all be better off if there was more of a conscious balance, because the predators, humans are predators.
Mm.
You know, we're predators. We're an animal. And the predator nature of humanity is really easy to see in the treatment world and in the medical world, because sick people are preyed upon by companies that they present themselves as there to help you. And yes, there is a part of that. But the dominant decision-making force behind the quote unquote industry is revenue generation. They don't pay multiples on quality of care. They pay multiples on EBITDA. They pay multiples on how much money you're making.
Mm.
And that's just unfortunate. It's sad, man.
I love hearing you say all that because, I've always known it was sacred. And I've always treated it that way. And the people who are really close to me, who like people who I love, who got sober after me and then decided they wanted to do this kind of work, that's the conversation I had with them. This is God's work. Don't ever let anybody tell you different. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And it is. It is. And that facility I mentioned, that it was a place called The Sanctuary, and I helped start it and ran it for the first 5 years. And, like I'm sure you experienced at the ranch, there's something really creative about starting a business. And you don't know what's going to come of it. And you don't know if it's going to succeed or fail, or, you're just not sure. And there are all these decisions that it's just an awesome form of creative expression. But, in that situation, every now and then the phones would stop ringing. We hit the ground running, did really well. Every now and then the phones would stop ringing. And then about the time we would have a conversation about it, then they'd start ringing again. And I always attributed that to the client always comes first here, no matter what. No matter what. And if I feel like if you do it that way, the rest falls into place. And I mean, I lived it in that experience. I know it's true
Mm-hmm.
because I believed it and acted as though it was true. It came true. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it's an honor, it's a privilege to be able to be at a place in a person's life when they're at their very worst, and you get to be there with them when they make that decision to change or not, I mean, but still you get to be there with them and witness it. And it's sacred, like you said.
Yeah, we stand in that place and hold that space where people are offered the opportunity to realize they really do have a choice. Now, the choice is theirs to make, right? To me, this work must be based in respect. So if someone chooses they just don't want to do it, well, that's their business. I don't have an opinion of them. I'm not going to get down on them. I mean, we've all seen that a lot. And I don't put energy on them. I don't put fear on them. I don't do that. I don't get indulgent with it. I'm like, listen, if I can give you the experience where you actually can realize that you really have a choice here, that's my job. That's the space I hold. What you choose to do with that then is your responsibility, not mine. Okay. And if you should choose to want to raise yourself up and wake up in your life and clean your life, then we got even more stuff that we can share with you and offer you. And the offering of each modality, the offering of going to 12-step meetings or going to SMART meetings or going to Dharma meetings or going to a sweat lodge or whatever it is the individual chooses to be their quote unquote program, to be their engagement, whatever they choose, what I've seen over the years, it is critically important that they own that choice and that you have held a space for them and you've told them this must be a conscious choice on your part so that you own it, so that you don't fall back on what you hear all the time is people say, oh, well, I went to 12-step meetings and they didn't work for me and 12 steps don't work and blah, 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 blah. Right. It's like, well, they probably were never told that they had a choice in the first place. And they probably never had a conversation with them that, you know what, for this to work for you, you're going to need to own this choice, not be doing it to be compliant with the program that you're in. Compliance is the weakest form of change there is, and people will raise. We've all seen amazing things happen with people. When you respect a human being, for the most part, most of us that end up in recovery, we've gone through long stretches of our life where we did not respect ourselves and consequently no one else respected us. When you don't respect yourself, you create a reality that no one else is going to respect you either, for the most part. It's got to begin at home. And so, that bringing attention to how we hold that space for these clients coming in is it's the greatest responsibility. Are we holding this space from a place of respect for each individual that comes in here? Or are we holding this place like we're a bunch of authority figures who are going to give them a new book of rules of how they have to live their life if they want to be recovering people? And it's just profoundly different energies and profoundly different invitations. And people will ride most, there's people that are so beat up they can't get out from under it. We all know that. But most people, that's where I see miracles. It's people that you never thought would ever hold their head up again, man. When you respect them and hold that space for them, they'll try to respect themselves again. That's the sweetness, man. That's the sweetness.
One of the things that I've seen over the years, there's such an inclination for people who do this type of work to take this position of this is what worked for me. So this is what you must do to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And judge them against that benchmark. And it's just not fair. And it's
a shadow of insecurity.
yeah.
That's a shadow of insecurity. They're still insecure, and they need that newcomer to validate them
Right.
because they're still in fear. They may have been sober for 100 years, but they've never undone the fear. You know, they're still haunted by the fear. And so I need you to validate. I mean, you see it all the time. That's why it's so important to guide people to recover faith in themselves. If an individual over time recovers faith in themselves, then it's absolutely okay for you, for anyone else to believe whatever they want to believe, because that's their responsibility and that's their choice. I mean, you and I've been doing this a long time, 20 something years, 25 years. Man, I've sat with thousands of people, and the conversation based on what I just said, meeting these clients from a place of respect, that it's your life. This is your choice.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people have said to me, God, man, I've been in 10 treatment centers. Nobody's ever said that to me before. I'm like, well, somebody just did.
Right.
So if your life's going to be a shit show going forward, then it's your shit show.
Right.
It's nobody else's fault from here on out. It's time for you to own the whole circus, baby.
Yeah.
They are your monkeys. They are your giraffes. Now, what do you want to do with them?
Well, so here's something I want to ask you about. Self-love. It's such a baffling concept to people. I mean, I think especially guys. I know for the longest time when someone, well, you need to learn how to get to know Tom. You need to learn how to love yourself. And it'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, what does that even mean? But it's true. Self-love, self-respect. I mean, it took me a long time to recognize just the way that I talked to myself.
Absolutely.
And how, in order to counteract that, that's really where the use of mantras has come in to my practice over the last, 5 or 6 years, where if we say good things to ourselves, it's like when we're kids. I mean, at least for me, when I was a kid, I had people who said shitty things to me. And after a while, I didn't need them anymore because the tape was there. It was in my head. And then I started saying it to myself and then living from that place. It's like living under the spell. And then, the only thing for me that really broke it.
Well, it is a spell.
Yeah. But what breaks it is a new spell, right?
Well, what breaks it, you have to undo the spell. So first we have to realize what our internal dialogue is. We have to realize that how we talk to ourselves. And something that's not spoken of often, I think it's more important the energy behind the words than it is the word itself. You can say, I love you in a way that cuts you to the bone. And you can say, I love you in a way that gives you goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
So the energy behind how the messages that we speak to ourselves is as important as the words are. But that's what, that's the legacy that we inherit. We're not the originators of the messes that we live in our lives. We inherited the predisposition and the setup and the scripts for that mess to have come to be.
Mm-hmm.
It was here waiting for us the day we were born. Now, we're not responsible for what we inherited, but we are 100% responsible for how we respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beautiful thing about recovery, is the opportunity to wake up to all of this. The opportunity to realize, man, it's really important. When I say my name's Lee and I am whatever comes after that, it is really important. Because we got this weird thing in our culture that self-deprecating talk or self-limiting talk or labeling ourselves, that there's humility in that. It's not humility.
Yeah.
It's another spell. My name's Lee. I'm a human being.
Right.
I've been saying that for 15 years, 20 something years in recovery. But I realized way back there, yes, I was addicted and I created that addiction. I didn't catch it.
Right.
I wasn't a cold. It took a lot of time and a lot of money to create that addiction, and I created it. Well, I uncreated it too.
Mm.
And I broke the spell and the pattern of behavior. And what am I? What am I? I'm still a mystery to me, but I like the mystery that I am. I enjoy being the whatever it is I am. I don't really need to know what I am because I love being here. And whatever created me knows what I am. My business is being the best version of myself that I enjoy being as much of the time as possible. Like I love life, man. And I think we come to love life ultimately as a result. Love yourself. Well, that's cool. But which self are you talking about?
Mm.
Because I've had some pretty weird selves going on inside of me at different points in my life that I was in love with, but it was kind of like a dysfunctional relationship, like dating a borderline. But, we are amazing beings. We are really amazing beings. And I don't believe that is incorporated enough into the invitation to recover. And yes, you got to meet people where they're at. And yes, we're beat up and worn out when we first ask for help. And we're beat up and worn out for some time after that. And I still believe that we can bring a more light-filled invitation to the journey of recovery than what a lot of people have been told. Because you know what? If you make it, you make it. And if you don't make it, you don't make it. And I don't know what's going on in this world, but this is not the beginning or end of anything. This world's not.
Well, the mystery thing is something that I talk to guys about sometimes because, we can either be in fear of, I don't know what the future holds, or we can embrace the mystery and be, man, I don't know what the future holds. It could be anything. It can be exciting. And it is exciting. I mean, dude, some of the stuff that I've experienced specifically in my career and on my path, I could have never imagined being a kid from Kokomo, Indiana. Like some of the stuff I've gotten to do and the people I've gotten to hang out with, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
I never would have expected any of it. And if I would have written the script, I'd have sold myself short.
Yeah.
It's so cool. It really is. And, like you mentioned being a dad. I mean, just that. Man, is there really anything better than that? I mean, I don't think so.
I say all the time, I thought I knew what love was until my first daughter was born.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like, whoa, man. I thought the lights were on, but when she showed up, the sun came up. Yeah.
Well, and for me, it made a big difference on how I worked with people, because when you experience that, I mean, before it was real easy for me to tell a mom or dad, you need to kick him out of the house, or you need to cut him off, or you need to, then after that, it was, you need to decide what your limit is and what's going to work for you and what you can stick with and do what works for you and stick to your decision. I mean, it just a whole different, it's real easy to tell people what to do with their kids when you've never felt that. But for me, one of the things that was real apparent, you go through life and people tell you how profound the love is when you become a parent. And, I don't know exactly what I expected, a burning bush or whatever, but And it wasn't anything dramatic, but what I felt very clearly was I could leave now and I would have fulfilled my purpose.
Yeah, I get that.
I just felt complete in a way that I didn't before.
And as a person in recovery, I know the one thing that really broke my heart in my addiction was the effect that it had on my being there for my daughters when they were little.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing that somehow or another, that was the awareness that when that really sunk in, it was like, this isn't okay.
Yeah.
This isn't okay. It was, I think men, a lot of men were, man, men are so weird. I think we're all out there trying to prove that we're good enough as hard as we can go. And we're completely self-absorbed when we're teenagers and in our 20s. And a lot of that is the way we're acculturated. It's almost as though we're taught that you have no value when you arrive in the world. And the only way for you to establish value is to go out there and earn it
Right.
based on the rules of your culture.
Right.
Which is completely insane. Like God created all these half-baked nothings that have no real value, but the world of man is where you're going to establish your value. I'm like, what jackass was it? But that's to me was the real heartbreak, man. It was like, I got to stop doing this. If it hadn't been for them, who knows?
Yeah. Something that really kind of sticks in my craw at this point in my life is this concept of women are inherently more emotional than men. I just don't buy it. I mean, I think women are better at experiencing their emotions because, it's more open to them, it's more accepted in our culture, but emotions aren't gender dependent. And I feel like so many of the problems in our society, including the ones that have been labeled toxic masculinity, I mean, to me, it's all about being able to experience your emotions and your relationship with your emotions. And this divine masculine, divine feminine, these concepts are thrown around a lot now. And they're spoken as if it's like gospel, like people really know. I think part of the healing in all this is to recognize that we don't, that we have a lot to learn about ourselves and about each other, and we don't know. What's your take on all that stuff?
Well, so, I've lived all these years with my relationship to Mexico. And of course, Mexican is still 80 or 90% Catholic. And the heart of Mexican faith is with the mother. In most Latin cultures, the heart of the faith is with the mother. It's the presence of the energy of the mother, the Virgin of Guadalupe or Tonantzin, however you know her. The fact is, we live in the modern man cultures in a male dominated legacy. We're born into a male dominated legacy. It just is what it is. And it is incredibly out of balance. And anything that is incredibly out of balance in nature is going to develop symptoms of that imbalance. And those symptoms in our culture is really a well-organized menu of symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at the greed and the consumption, at all the judgment, at the wars, at the projection that we do. I mean, each of us, I don't know that we really have a gender. And I mean, this is a whole other conversation. I'm about as whatever you call it. I'm about as straight a male as you can get in this incarnation. But honestly, I don't know that our spirit has a gender. But I do know that our physiology, being born into these human forms, clearly has a gender, but to me, it's all about realizing a balance for ourselves. And the way that we're acculturated, again, the way we're domesticated, that men do it this way. Boys look like this. You dress like this. You act like this. And girls, you dress this way and you act like this. And so the scripts that we are programmed with and domesticated with as kids growing up create a divide that's so limiting. But the presence, see, divine feminine, divine masculine, we're divine feminine and divine masculine. There's just one show going on here. There's one living embodiment of life going on here. You know, God is not out there. God is here right now. We're it. And so to live in balance in this world of duality is to realize relationships with the energies, and it's all a relationship to me. I mean, I have a long-lasting relationship with the presence of the mother. She's come to me. She's shown me stuff. She is my person. And it doesn't even matter the form because I know the energy when it appears. And what I know her to be is that energy, not the embodiment. Christ is an energy. He was not limited to the embodiment of the dude that was born in the manger. That was a physical incarnation. The energy, the Christ energy is an eternal present energy that's available. But we humans keep creating God and the world in our own image because, well, for a bunch of different reasons, but they're all self-limiting reasons. There are still cultures that do not even have gods in their culture. Their relationship with life and the mystery is that it's all energies. And so it lightens it up when you realize it to be energies.
Mm.
That's a whole, I mean, I just kind of went down a rabbit hole, but that's the world I live in. Somebody asked me the other day, one of the kids in a group, he said, well, what is your spirituality? And it been a really good group and they were really tuned in. And I said, I'm going to tell you the truth. Spirituality to me is the life I live. It's not a belief system. I don't believe anything about spirituality. I have relationships with life that show me and reveal to me, and I feel it and I'm aware of it. And it's a relationship that I live, and he was like, whoa, man. I said, well, that's the truth, brother. And all I can tell you is that if you keep praying and asking and looking and keep reminding yourself you don't know anything and you're capable of having a relationship with everything and just feel your way into it, your relationship to the mystery will come to you because each of us will have our own unique relationship with the presence of I call it the light.
Mm.
You call it whatever you want to call it. It's all cool.
Well, and you mentioned feel your way into it, which one of the things that I heard very early on is feelings are gifts from God. And, we don't think of them that way, but they're informative.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that my spiritual connection is rooted in emotion. I do. I feel like it's really, really important. I feel like it's all tied together.
Well, it's all energy. Love is an energy. Grace is an energy. When you feel love coming from within you, love comes from within us out.
Yeah.
Love doesn't come from that person across the room to me. Love comes from within me out. That's how we experience love. But it's a frequency of energy. That's what it is. You can't show it to me. You can show me what you bought to represent it,
Right.
but you can't show me that energy, and that's a lot of recovery too, I guess. Emotional sobriety stuff is, it's so important to develop a practice of being aware of what we're giving our attention to.
Mm.
If there's something in my life, a memory, a story, a feeling, a fear, that every time it comes up, I get sucked down the rabbit hole of giving that my energy. The moment I give it my attention, I'm giving it energy. I'm giving it life. And if I keep giving my attention to things that haunt me, or old stories that limit me, or old labels that limit me, if I keep giving those things my attention, then I'm the one creating the barriers to my ability to grow beyond that. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
my name's Lee. I'm a
absolutely.
human being. For 4 or 5 years, my name's Lee, and I was an addict. Well, it got to where that didn't feel correct.
Yeah.
And I'd bring it up in a meeting. And of course, I'd get spanked in the meeting.
Right.
But then I was just like, you know what? It doesn't feel right. I got to start trusting how things feel.
Yeah.
The body doesn't lie. Well, a clean body doesn't lie.
Well, man, like I could just go on and on with you like this. And we talked earlier, I hope we can do some more stuff like this. But looking back on your life, when was the time when the younger Lee needed some support or advice the most? And what would you go back and say to him?
Oh, man. It would probably have been, actually, maybe, I mean, there's a zillion times. Maybe when I was a senior in high school and we took these aptitude test things that were supposed to tell you what you were best suited for. And mine said that I should be a park ranger, or, the things that it said I was best suited for. I was told I couldn't do any of those things because my family was big business people, and that was never going to work for me. And I needed to be a big business person. And so I kind of, it was like one of those moments where the truth of what I had a passion for, and the truth of what I was drawn to, was not okay.
Yeah.
And then, then from then on, I was trying to fit in, really trying to fit in and do what I should have done, that, be a big business guy. And I sucked at that. So yeah, I wish I'd have just been me and done what my heart was directed toward in the first place. But it didn't. It only took me 15 years of being a complete madman, and, landing in a treatment center, to come back around to realize, oh, well, maybe I need to try and be me again.
Yeah. I had a different version of the same experience. The things that I was really meant to do were beyond the limits of what people in my family were supposed to do. And so, of course, I wanted to fit. I wanted to keep their love and their favor. And, I was afraid to step out. And, and part of it was I didn't have the self-esteem to be able to just say, screw you, I'm going to do whatever I want.
Right.
But really, to me, it's, we've talked about, it's all about getting back to who we are in the first place. That's the healing. That's what it is. And that's why I wanted to do this podcast. That's really what it's about. To give people an opportunity to hear the stories of people like you, to validate their stories for them, really.
Mm-hmm.
And that we are divine and we are pure and we deserve to be who we are.
Well, if we're not being the truth of who we really are, then we can't be anything but a fraud.
Right.
We can be a very well-intentioned one, but you're going to be a fraud.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't play well, because we're better than that.
Yeah.
We're above that.
Well, this has been great, man. Thank you.
Yeah, brother. Thank you.
All right, Lee McCormick. So, hope you guys enjoyed it. Please take the time to leave a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, wherever it is you listen. If you know someone who you think might enjoy this, please forward it to them. If you're interested in supporting the show, you can do that by becoming a patron on Patreon. And by doing so, you can gain early access to episodes like this one, as well as supplemental content and unedited interviews. So when I interviewed Lee, did it on a Thursday. As soon as we finished that evening, I uploaded it to Patreon. As soon as I got the episode done on Saturday, uploaded the completed episode to Patreon. It came out on Tuesday. And in the meantime, on Saturday, I did a little mini episode just for patrons. So that's what that's all about. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month at this point. And it's really just a way for me to get a little support so I can improve the equipment I use, spend more time doing this stuff. Anyway, I appreciate your support. So I want to thank the band Punk Rock Opera, whose music you hear throughout the show. Their songs are used with permission from the artist and under a Creative Commons license. Thank you to the show's sponsors, the Manor and Windrose Recovery, Her Escape Vortex. Thank you to Wendy Chen at Equivox. And as always, the Path to Authenticity is proud to support the I Speak Media Foundation. Check out the website, thepathtooauthenticity.com. You can email the show at thepathtooauthenticity@gmail.com. If you have questions or comments, you can call and leave a voicemail at 561-247-4757. Look forward to hearing from you. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, playlists on Spotify, you know the drill. So again, I really appreciate and am grateful that anyone is willing to invest the time in listening to this show. So thank you for doing that. Hope you have a great week. Be nice.
Crawled through the desert for days and days, running from death the only way. I came from nowhere with nowhere to start. I feel this change may not leave a mark. I died on that street. I died on that road. I died in the fire. All those years ago. I rose up like a phoenix in flame. Like a record turned over, started anew again. I'll play for you and maybe you'll see.
it a guitar player?
The Path to Authenticity is powered by Equivox. For digital marketing and web design services, visit equivox.com.